The all-new Cadillac Lyriq is insanely important for General Motors and for Cadillac as well. Not only is this the first crossover built on their all-new Ultium platform that's going to underpin a wide variety of electric vehicles, all the way from bat-crap crazy Hummer EVs to Cadillac luxury EVs and even affordable EVs from Chevy. But this is important because it's charting a new direction for Cadillac, not just in terms of design, obviously really distinctive right here with this blacked out grille section there, but also the interior design, which is what we're going to talk about in this video. This Cadillac shares nothing on the inside with any other Cadillac and any other General Motors product. And Cadillac says that that is the way of the future for all Cadillac models. New buttons, new switches, new steering wheels, new seats, new everything that will not be shared with any other GM vehicle. So let's dive inside. Before we get to the interior, be sure and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and subscribe to the EV Buyer's Guide channel, because that's where you're going to find the complete video on this Cadillac Lyriq just as soon as the embargo lifts. There will be a shorter form video on the Alex and Autos channel, but all the details are going to be over there on EV Buyer's Guide. This video is going to be all about the interior, because that's the interior we're going to find in every Cadillac, hybrid, non-hybrid, whatever General Motors comes up with. We're promised that all of them are going to be sharing these new interior components. All right, let's take a look at the inside. The first thing you'll notice is that we have an all-new steering wheel design not shared with any other GM vehicle. In fact, the core of the steering wheel, the wheel itself under the leather, is different as well. At the top of the wheel, we have the indicator for the Super Cruise system. That's going to be optional on the Lyriq. This model has it. There's a little LED in there to give you the status of the Super Cruise system. On the back of the wheel, we have a regen brake paddle. This is different than the one that we find in the Chevy Bolt because this is a variable paddle. It's not just an on-off switch. The harder you pull it, the more regen braking you're going to get. We have touch buttons on the lower side of the steering wheel there, and then toggles just above. These relate to the collision warning system and the adaptive cruise control system. The ones over here are for infotainment. What's interesting about these capacitive touch buttons is that they respond differently than a lot of other buttons. There's no physical module like we find in some of the Germans. So if you press really hard over here, it's not like anything is ever going to go tick. But there is haptic feedback. So if I press an option here, the button module vibrates, and it has an audible click as well to let you know that you've really done something. But you cannot just casually touch these buttons. It requires a dedicated press to actually engage and disengage the system. In addition to not responding randomly, the other thing I loved about these touch buttons is that they seem to respond well to even dry fingers, something that touchscreen infotainment systems can sometimes have troubles with. Over here on this side, we have a few other controls. So we have track forward, backward, and then you can pull up a list right there for things like radio favorites on that instrument cluster. We also have a button over here to change that input, and then you use that toggle to interact with it. Behind the steering wheel, we have a new shifter design that is vaguely reminiscent of Mercedes designs. It is illuminated, so if I pull this and put it in drive, that's indicated right there. And then you have a little icon to tell you exactly how to use the stalk. So to shift, you pull it back towards the driver, push it up for reverse, down for drive, and then park is that button at the end. Matching the style of that, we have a new turn signal and windshield wiper stalk. There's a one-touch mode for just a simple wipe of the screen. You can also press and hold to wash the windshield. And of course, we have auto modes. Nice touch on this module is that in addition to the knurled bits there, we also have a lever on the back of the stalk to make it easier to select an option. Well, we're on this side of the dashboard. If you've ever wondered where the Cadillac ducts went, they've gone right here to the side of the dashboard. As promised, the window switches and door lock buttons are unique to the Cadillac lineup, as are the new seat controls on the doors. This gives us seat heating and ventilation, memory controls, and then of course adjustment for the driver and front passenger seats. This little knob here rotates around as well as goes up and down. That's how you select between the massage functionality and the lumbar adjustment. It does have four-way lumbar. Of course, on the dashboard, we have new materials and new designs for components like the air vents. The knobs are not organ stops like we find in Rolls-Royce models. They rotate to open and close the vent, and then they move around to direct the air up and down. You can actually see the little vanes inside there moving side to side, but they're very discreet. And the way that they've made this channel very small and very narrow, all you can really see from most angles is that strip of piano black inside the air vent module. In the middle of the dashboard, we have sort of a mail slot vent right here. It's just the driver's air vent, and air comes mainly out of this portion of the vent rather than over there on the passenger side. Below that, we have a row of physical buttons. They're partial on-off switches and partial toggles. These three in the middle are toggles. The others just click on and off. Now I'm going to pan across the interior so you get a better sense of what this looks like all together. The interior is truly dominated by this absolutely enormous bank of LCD right there in the middle, but there is a twist. But before I get to that, let's go down here. You can see that we do have a flat floor as you'd expect in an EV, and a lot of extra style. Zooming in on that area there, if the camera will focus, you can see there's even stitching on that imitation leather insert that is contrasting to really dress up this interior. Lots of really nicely done buttons, extra knurled bits right there in the style, etc. But clearly we need to go back to this enormous LCD bank. Now in reality, I should just say enormous LCD because rather unlike Mercedes or Hyundai and Kia that have big LCDs in the dashboard, this is not a multiple LCD setup. So there isn't just one LCD over here and one LCD over here and then another one over here like we find in the Escalade. This is in fact one enormous 33-inch OLED display. The section over here for infotainment, that is touch enabled. There's actually a touch sensor overlaid on the screen over here on this side and then a small one over here on the left side of the LCD. But as you'd expect out of an instrument cluster, this section's not touch enabled because it doesn't need to be. It does change theme. If I go over here to this gauge option, that gives us, at least for the moment, a more traditional gauge layout. You can also choose an energy-centric layout, a moving map display layout being provided by the same Google mapping interface as the rest of the system. You can also opt for a clean layout if you prefer something a bit more reserved. And Cadillac has said that extra themes for these gauges are coming via software updates and likely extra designs as well. This is always something that Cadillac has done very well, and I expect that to continue with this new software version. Now, even though these LCDs look very much like the ones that we find in the Escalade, the software and the hardware behind it is quite different. Also on the touch-sensitive left-hand side of the display, we have things like our trip computer readouts. You can also control the headlights from this side. It might seem repetitive to some, but I do like the infotainment duplication over here on the left side of the instrument cluster. So if you're using this display for something else, you can still keep an eye on your tunes. And again, you can use some of the controls on the steering wheel to change your source and rifle through your tunes, etc. Looking at this center portion, you'll notice that smartphone integration does not use the entire display. And that's because the entire display has this eccentric curve right there on that side, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto just don't use that particular format. But if you use the native mapping interface, you can use that entire screen all the way from one side to the other. Now, rather surprisingly, Cadillac said that a decent number of their customers do have an affinity for this controller down here. So we have a new version of it. This controller rotates around. It has a more premium feel than before. Cadillac logo inside. It also toggles side to side, up, down, clicks to enter, etc. There's also touch capacitive buttons here for the various functions, and then a scroll wheel for the volume. That's very Mercedes-like right there. Two large cup holders over there on that side. Going back to the center console area, there's a storage cubby right there under that button bank. It has a nice soft close and soft open mechanism. It has the same sort of imitation leather on the inside in blue that we have down there in that storage area at the bottom. Going in for a little bit of a closer look, we have that Cadillac logo on the left side, a slim USB-C port, plenty of storage area down there in this semi-floating center console, I guess you'd say. This center section right here is kind of a diving board design. And in case you're wondering what's on the left side of the steering wheel, I'm not hiding anything. We have an entirely new button bank there as well. Electric parking brake, lane centering, auto brake hold, and the dimmer dial. The lid for the storage area between the front seats is retained by a magnet that gives us a bit more of a premium feel. We have a Qi wireless charging slot right there, and there's enough room for some of those larger smartphones like iPhone 13 Maxes. You can see that my smartphone is currently connected via the USB-C port. This does support wireless CarPlay, and it supports multiple different USB ports. So unlike some car companies that make you use a specific USB port for Apple CarPlay, you can use either of the two ports that are up front in the vehicle. One peculiar thing I noticed in here, the glove box release is a touch button in that infotainment system, but we do have a nice large compartment. Cadillac didn't forget about the ceiling. We have an all-new button bank up here for the controls for the OnStar system, and of course the shade for the panoramic moonroof. You may have noticed the shapes on that ceiling-mounted button bank. They mirror the shapes on the front and rear doors. This is a really interesting touch. This is real wood trim. It's then been laser cut into these little triangular shapes. They then bond a really thin metal strip on the back that allows this to be a basic trim strip like you'd see here during the day, but also be ambient lighting at night. That style continues with the rear doors, but because there's no dashboard to put speakers on for the rear passengers, we get a metal speaker grate behind. Cadillac says that at the moment, imitation leather upholstery is the only option in the Lyriq, but a real leather option is coming a little bit later. One really cool touch, the back of the seat, this is actually a stitched panel as well. So it's the same material that's going on the front of the seat, and it's actually stitched together with that seam right there. And speaking of the seats, this model has surround sound speakers in the headrests and a blue stripe that runs down the seat to give it a little bit more pizzazz. And yes, in case you're wondering, Cadillac even gave it a different button to open the hatch. To be perfectly honest, I was surprised that Cadillac put so much effort into replacing all of the buttons, switches, levers, stalks, etc. in the new Lyriq, because I didn't really find a problem with any of their switchgear before. Cadillac, for some reason, and Lincoln as well, are often raked across the coals by automotive journalists for sharing switches from this model or that model. I've always said, so what? Volkswagen and Audi share a lot of parts, BMW and Mini share a lot of parts, and Mercedes still shares a lot of parts with Chrysler and Dodge vehicles in the United States. When the last generation Mercedes S-Class was still around in the United States, the S-Class and the Mercedes-Benz GLS shared window switches with the Dodge Dart. So what's wrong with Cadillac sharing window switches with the pickup truck? I personally never found that to be a problem, but if you're the kind of person that was really offended by that, then Cadillac says that they have solved that with all the new buttons and gadgets and gizmos going on in the new Lyriq. Again, let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section. And of course, again, stay tuned because the full video on this Lyriq is going to be over there on the EV Buyer's Guide channel. There will be a shorter condensed format over here for this channel. Let me know what you think about that as well. Not everybody seems to be interested in EVs, and that's why we're trying to split the content a little bit, but some folks might want to know a little bit about the Lyriq, so we're going to try and have a condensed version. As always, be sure and hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen. Check us out on all your favorite social media channels, and of course, check out the podcast, that's Auto Buyer's Guide, on all of your favorite podcast locations. I'll see all of you later.